So, how to pre-qualify prospects. So, the goal of this workshop is to learn how to pre-qualify prospects before selling to them. And here's what we will cover. So, what lead qualification is and why it's so important, the methods of pre-qualifying prospects, the information you should gather about a prospect, and how to know when it's time to move forward to a phone call. So following up a lot of unqualified leads is a waste of time for everybody involved. So it's important to know how to screen prospects before you get to the discovery call stage. So not everybody who comes your way will be your ideal customer. So what is lead qualification? So lead qualification is the process of working out how likely it is that a prospect will actually buy from you at some stage. So lead qualification is an ongoing event. It's happening at every stage of the sales journey. So it often involves asking prospects questions about how they're positioned at the moment and what they're looking for, and using those answers to determine whether they're a good fit for your product or service at the moment. An exploratory call can be an important part of establishing whether or not it's going to make sense to go through with a sale of the product or service you're offering, but you don't want to be calling every possible lead. So phone calls can take up a lot of time, and you can end up spending a lot of effort making calls to leads who turn out not to be qualified. So maybe they have a budget expectations that don't match what you offer at all, or the person you're speaking to doesn't actually have the authority to make the decision whether or not to buy from you. So essentially what we're trying to do here is we don't want to waste time. So time is completely precious, especially if you're a sole trader or you've got loads of other tasks to be doing during the day. So the best way to do it is to pre-qualify your leads and to only make those calls or have those conversations with people who you know are going to be worthwhile and you know that you're possibly going to get a high conversion rate on. So maybe the need or problem they're trying to address isn't actually something you can help with, or it is, but they don't actually want to do anything about it for 8 months or more. So imagine getting on the phone and realizing after 40 minutes, actually, the urgency isn't quite there. So in any of these cases, you would have been better off using a pre-qualifying process to ensure you only get on the phone with people who are a good fit for your business and vice versa. So a phone conversation can be an important part of the lead qualification process, but save time and effort by pre-screening prospects first. So how to go about pre-qualifying prospects. So there are a number of practical methods you can use to pre-qualify leads so that you don't end up having lengthy and ultimately disappointing phone conversations with unqualified prospects. So one option is to introduce a form for potential customers to fill out in order to schedule a call. This could be just 2 or 3 questions to pin down whether the prospect has the most important characteristics for your buyer profile, or it could be more extensive. Please watch the other video below this, which goes into a little bit more detail about how I do this specifically. So if you're worried that having a barrier to further communication will put people off, you can just ask for contact details at this stage and then follow up with an email explaining that you can ask all potential customers to fill out a pre-call survey to make sure that everybody's on the same page and the phone call can be as useful as possible to all parties. So bear in mind, somebody who isn't prepared to take some time to answer questions that pre-screen for a fit on both sides might be signaling that they aren't prepared to put the time in to really investigate whether your product or service is the best one for them. So some people like that we know of, they might just be wasting a little bit of time. They might just be curious, but again, that urgency isn't there, and that tells us that urgency isn't there, or they just don't really have the time to kind of fulfill this. So, for example, if you're offering something like a course or a program and that time's needed, if they can't invest 5 minutes, what does that say? Are they going to be able to invest the 5 hours that we're wanting them to put in, and so forth? So as tempting as it is to work with every possible lead, you'll ultimately get the best results from prioritizing work with people who demonstrate that they're being thoughtful about what they need. So those kind of customers will appreciate that you respect their time and your own too much to go into a call without a sense of the fit. So aside from asking direct questions of possible leads, there's also a lot of useful pre-qualifying information you can get just by doing your own research. So what information should you be looking for? So we can break this down into information you can get through research and general online observation, and information best obtained by asking through a pre-call form or survey. So the more a potential customer has interacted with your online presence, the more interest this indicates and the more likely they are to eventually make a purchase. So by tracking data like frequency of visits to your site, comments or likes on your posts, you can get a good sense of prospects' degree of interest. So you can also look at different kinds of engagement. For example, tracking newsletter open rates is another good indication of how likely your prospect is to buy. Social media interaction can be a good indication of how interested a prospect is in your product or service, going back to the cold, warm, or hot audience. Data in your emails. So even if you don't have a landing page that's collecting emails, you might end up in conversation over email, or you might take them from social media to email, which is something that I do quite a lot, especially for my high ticket products, because I believe that taking them sometimes from one channel to the other can actually change the approach and create a different level of professionalism. So make use of email data such as open rates and click-through rates to get a clearer picture of lead interest and viability. So you can get information on the company your lead is from. This is obviously important to know if the organization is B2B, and compare the size of the company to your ideal customer profile. So if you're on LinkedIn and Facebook, there's some really, we're able to kind of access ample amount of information that we may not get if they just emailed us from a personal email address that just said something like sally1@hotmail.com. We can't go then searching for them. We don't know anything about them. This is why social media is so great, because we can actually start to look and find a little bit more information about them before we end up on that phone call, so we can get a gauge of, do we think this person is going to be a right fit for our product, just by doing a little bit of research. So you also want to watch out for spam. So there are certain clues that forms have been filled out by bots, such as information filled out in all lowercase letters, sometimes capital letters, sometimes things just don't make sense. So that just goes without saying. And budgets are important too. Another good way to kind of pre-qualify is all about budget. So we'll start with the big one. So it can feel uncomfortable to ask about budget straight off the bat, but it is an important question nonetheless. So you don't have to ask them for a hard figure, and they may not have a perfect idea at this stage of what's going to be reasonable, but you need to know they've considered budget, and you need to know whether they have a definite idea that would rule out the possibility of making a sale. So it can be useful to get a sense of whether the person you're in contact with actually has the necessary authority to make a purchase. So if your buyer profile is senior level management and you're in conversation with an associate, moving forward with a phone call isn't going to get you anywhere. So sometimes budgets are tied up and people have to get permission. There might be delays, and especially in my field of work, when I offer certain level of services to really big companies, there's generally a process that is in place. So the person I'm talking to doesn't have the authority to make a purchase, and we need to make sure that we know who that person is. So how do you know it's time to move forward in the process? So once you have all this information about your prospect, you've done the call, you've done their form, you need to compare that to what you know about your usual buyers, who's purchased from you in the past. So when you look at previous customers, especially your highest quality leads, look at the characteristics that they had in common. So you might want to make use of a benchmark figure for conversions by comparing the number of new customers acquired with the total number of leads generated. Do this in a really simple spreadsheet. So then do the same thing, but specifically for customers with certain characteristics. For example, look at the historical number of leads who became customers who were signed up to your newsletter, and divide that by the total number of prospects who were signed up to your email newsletter. Just an example. You might have different channels, different social media channels where you'll be able to extract that data from, but that's just an example. So at this stage, you should have a lot of figures attached to the various qualities of your leads, and you can start to calculate scores for your leads based on which of these qualities they have. So did 30% of your newsletter subscribers go on to make a purchase? So how many people in your Facebook group, once you warm them up, made a purchase? How many people on your LinkedIn page that you spoke to on Messenger went to make a purchase? Track this information. It's important. Going back to the analytical approach, we start to track the data. We start to gain an understanding. We can look for anomalies. We can look for areas of improvement, and we can move forward to convert better. Scoring prospects. You might assign, say, 30 points to a prospect who is signed up to your Facebook group. This might sound like a lot of work, but it's going to save you a lot of time and effort in the long run, so don't skip it. So once you've assigned scores to your various leads based on the qualities, you can make a far more educated decision about which of your prospects it makes sense to have a further phone call with and which are unlikely to be a good fit. So if somebody joins a 5-day challenge that you've got, or signs up to a newsletter, or opts in to receive a free download that you've got, anything like that, we want to be attaching points to these. So then what you can do is you can look and see how many points somebody has and which of those are warm, which ones are hot, which ones can you nurture a little bit more. So don't be afraid to rule out people out of a further phone call if the information you've got suggests they wouldn't be a good fit. And this is really hard, especially if you're in that stage in your business where you feel like, I just need the money, so anybody will be fine. I've been there. I know what that feels like. But doing this the correct way will give you better results in the long run. So this doesn't have to be an unpleasant conversation. Simply tell the prospect that it doesn't look like what you're offering is a good match for what they need at the moment. So it can be helpful to suggest further avenues for them to pursue, as this helps to persevere the relationship for possible future work, as well as indicating to them that you care about their results. So ultimately, although you want to get as many sales as you can, pursuing leads that are unlikely to go anywhere isn't productive, use of anybody's time at all. So your homework is to write a short questionnaire for pre-qualifying leads for your own business and consider how you can ensure they're a good fit before you have a telephone conversation with them.